Hello and welcome to Oklahoma Contemporary. My name is Marie Casimir and I'm the curator of public programs and performances. This evening's program, in conversation with Noor Ahmed and Samir Khan, will be moderated by Dr. Nyla Ali Khan. We hope you had some time to see the exhibition this evening, and if you haven't, that's okay. We hope this conversation will be good food for thought. You know what? I said I would take this off. Let's do that. A little bit more comfortable. I first want to thank our sponsors. Our public program sponsor for this evening is Cox, so thank you to Cox. And then Home 1947, the exhibition, is sponsored by Oklahoma Humanities and the National Endowment for the Arts. Thank you also to our anchor funders, Kirkpatrick Family Fund, Allied Arts, woohoo! Allied Arts, Adventure Road, Art Desk, and Oklahoma Arts Council, and of course the generous support of many individuals who made this possible. Okay, moving on. We also want to thank the Home 1947 Advisory Committee for their support and guidance in planning our programs for this exhibition. We've been working with them for many, many months, so thank you to all, many of who are in the room, who are here, located in Oklahoma. Thank you to that committee, especially to Dr. Nyla Khan, who will be moderating today, who's chair of that committee, and also Wasim Ahmed, who contributed to the delicious menu of taste tested or had some bites from Kebabish. The food was delicious, right? So thank you to that. That was one of the most fun staff got to taste test. So we really enjoyed that part of the job. There are perks of the job, and we had some delicious food. Okay, I want to share some brief bios for our speakers today. So please allow me just a little bit time to do so. So with us, we have Noor Ahmed, who is the general manager of the Citizens Archive of Pakistan, also known as CAP, dedicated to cultural and historical preservation in Karachi, Lahore, and Islamabad, with wide outreach across Pakistan. Among the most comprehensive digital archives on the partition of India, CAP has extensively recorded personal testimonies of the generation that underwent the largest migration in recorded history through its oral history project. Ahmed was part of the curatorial team for the award-winning Pakistan Pavilion at Dubai Expo 2020. Her writing on contemporary art and culture has appeared in local and international publications. So welcome to Noor. Yeah, you can clap. Let's clap. Okay. And then we also welcome Samir Khan, who has worked in several studios in the UK, India, and Pakistan since completing a diploma in audio engineering on a variety of different film projects as well as advertising campaigns. Since 2005 to 2011, he also worked with the composers Shankar Eshenloy, close? Yeah? Apologies, in Mumbai on numerous film music projects. He has also recorded and mixed the entire background score and songs for Pepley Live, which was nominated for the Oscars in 2011. I know, impressive. We have impressive people here. Since October 2017, he has been working at SOC Films as both a sound engineer and producer on a variety of projects, including documentary and advertising films for clients such as the British Council, Google Arts and Culture, which is Pakistan's Museum of Food, and the National History Museum of Pakistan. Okay, and they came all the way from Pakistan, so thank you to them for joining us. And finally, Dr. Nyla Ali Khan is a professor at Oklahoma City Community College in Oklahoma and has taught at the University of Oklahoma as a guest lecturer. She's an author, lecturer, public speaker, and activist. She received her PhD in English literature and her master's in post-colonial literature and theory at the University of Oklahoma. She spent time studying, writing, and presenting her findings to empower all women. Her findings are mostly concerned with the political unrest and bloodshed in her home state of Jammu and Kashmir, India, which she visits frequently. In May 2015, Khan was the first Kashmiri woman to be nominated and accepted as a member of the Advisory Council for the Oklahoma Commission on the Status of Women. So thank you to Dr. Khan. Okay, I always have the most laborious job of reading all of the bios, but I'm happy to do it because people work hard. And so finally, Sharmeen Obaid Chinoy is currently in Karachi working on Star Wars, which is why she can't be here this evening. So she couldn't be here with us today, but she sent a message for our community. So we just wanted to take a moment to share it with you. So if we're ready, let's take a moment to listen to her message.
Home 1947 is an immersive installation that I have curated, and I'm excited that it is traveling to Oklahoma Contemporary Art Center. Home 1947 takes you back 75 years to the Indian subcontinent, which saw the largest mass migration the world has ever seen. At the heart of it is the story of what it means to leave your home. Oklahoma is a place where people are still planting their roots. I think the stories we bring will resonate with people because these are the stories that people carry with them when they migrate to America, which is a melting pot of so many people from around the world. As you walk through this exhibit, you will be able to go through the suitcases that they took with them, their belongings, the photographs, the faded letters, the pieces of cloth that they wrapped their children in as they fled. Home 1947 is deeply personal to me as an artist. My own family migrated in 1947. And the genesis of this exhibit comes from the stories that I grew up listening to, of the homes that they grew up in and were never able to return. I look forward to welcoming all of you at the Oklahoma Contemporary Art Center starting February 22nd, 2024.
Welcome. I see a lot of familiar faces in the audience, which is wonderful. And the audience comprises not just people from the diasporic communities of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, but I see a lot of American and Turkish friends as well. So we have a multiracial, multicultural audience. Now, I was asked to locate myself within the geography, history, and lineage of the partition. So originally, I am from the Kashmir Valley, which is in Jammu and Kashmir in India. India and Pakistan share the waters of the Indus Basin, which originates in my home region of Jammu and Kashmir. In my academic work, I have focused on building bridges between the three parts of Jammu and Kashmir. So Jammu, which has a sizable Hindu population, Kashmir, which is predominantly Muslim, and Ladakh, which has a sizable Shia Muslim population as well as a Buddhist population. In my work, I also explore historical linkages with the parts of Kashmir in Pakistan, including the northern areas. So today's event for me is an attempt to initiate the politics of construction. To further this process, it is important to maintain the pluralistic, religious, cultural, and linguistic ethos of South Asia. India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh are heterogeneous countries, which is interesting and wonderful as well. And perhaps it is time to finally humanize the partition and to listen to stories of ordinary people whose lives changed because of the partition. It is time to dig into what academics call the unhistorical historiography. So people whose voices and stories were marginalized, who lost their homes, who were uprooted, who were dislocated, and finally relocated, some voluntarily, others were forced to do so. And the partition also bears testament to human resilience and to the ability of people to recreate their lives after having gone through terrible adversity. So I'm glad all of you are here. And now, Noor, over to you.
And thank you for hosting us here at the Oklahoma Contemporary Arts Center. Partition for, I think, all of us is quite personal. My father's family migrated from Kashmir, from near Srinagar, and my mother's family was from Ahmedabad, a little bit ahead of Lahore in Punjab. So they didn't actually make the migration. But it was an event that both sides of the family, you know, it was a before and after. It was a moment that you categorized every other sort of event in your life in your recorded history alongside. And growing up, there were sort of big gaps when I would speak to my grandparents' generation about partition, about the history we would talk about and the history we wouldn't talk about. So stories and exhibitions such as this one really help contextualize our history and our humanity, our shared humanity.
My family is spread across, I mean, to this day, spread across all three of these countries that Nyla mentions. My mother's family were Hindus from what was then East Bengal, then became East Pakistan, and then became Bangladesh. My grandmother, I grew up with my grandmother's stories of how she wanted to go with all her brothers and sisters to Calcutta and live as a refugee, which sounds crazy because that's what everyone was doing. And my grandfather decided to stay put in East Pakistan because he felt confident that he could manage that. And, you know, he had a very extended family himself, a huge extended family. So for her, the journey was more from Chittagong, Chattogram, as they call it now, to Karachi. Karachi was a foreign country for her. But ironically, that's where my mother and my mamus, my uncles and all were brought up. So they were very comfortable in that milieu. On the other hand, my father's family originate Afghan origin, but were living in northern India in the foothills. They were living in Missouri, and they made the sort of the journey to Pakistan quite comfortably. I think they were very privileged in the manner that they were not party. I mean, as far as I know, I mean, they did not have to witness the bloodshed and all the other kind of. They had a very long, extended journey. And it took several months for them to reach Pakistan, but they were very lucky. But yes, I mean, I grew up hearing both of these sides. So yeah, so my mother's family were Hindu, but my father's family were Muslim, basically. So,
Mir, so my role in this project, I had the pleasure and privilege of meeting Karina several months ago. And that's when she told me about Sharmeen Obaid Chinoy's exhibition on Home 1947. And of course, I was very excited that Sharmeen and her team had chosen Oklahoma City for this exhibition because I knew full well that it would resonate with people here. Several analogies can be drawn between the Trail of Tears, which occurred in the 1800s, and the partition of India in 1947. As we know full well, during the Trail of Tears, members of the 5 civilized tribes were marched out of their ancestral lands and relocated to present-day Oklahoma. And something similar occurred during the partition of India in 1947. So as chair of the advisory committee, it was my role to bring members of the Indian, Pakistani, and Bangladeshi diasporas together and to identify areas of common outlook and interest between the three. So I was happy to play that role of bridge builder. Noor, could you tell us a little about your role in this project?
So I run an organization called the Citizens Archive of Pakistan, which is an organization that Sharmeen and her friends actually co-founded in her parents' living room when they were all in their 20s. And the idea behind the organization was that there was no sort of publicly accessible place that one could really go to access one's own history. If you wanted to look at old materials, old artifacts, old documents, there was a real lack of access to that information. So Citizens Archive was born with that idea. And it really began documenting the stories of the partition generation, because there was a real fear that this generation was passing on. And with that, so would their experiences, the struggles and everything that they went through. So my role in this exhibition was to look at Sharmeen's vision for the show while looking at this historical data. So in this exhibition, there is Home 1947. Actually, this is the 4th iteration of the exhibition, but it's its North American debut. And the Citizens Archive of Pakistan has curated from its own archive a small section in the exhibition, which is interactive. And I hope you've all gotten a chance to take a look at that.
Thank you, Noor. Samir, could you tell us a little about your role?
I joined SOC Films, which is Sharmeen's film arm of operations, as it were, and I joined as a sound engineer. So my role primarily in the first few iterations of the exhibition was as an audio consultant, and the sort of all this sound related things related to the films, the developing the sound corridor, and the various other the music, the musical overture, and all those kind of things. For this iteration, I, along with my fellow producer Faizan Ali, were asked to produce an extra couple of films, basically, for this. So that was my role for this particularly, but also, again, overlooking all the different aspects of the exhibition, and especially the VR as well. VR section, which was our camera team did an excellent job of. I think that seems to be the firm favorite.
Certainly my favorite. It's fascinating.
And yes, and updating everything and making it relevant. And of course, we're indebted to CAP for their help, because a lot of our archival material is drawn from them as well. But yes, it was very challenging, but I think this is probably the best iteration so far.
So Samir, what was Sharmeen's intention with telling the story of Home 1947?
Well, I think, like she mentions in her message, it was really her grandparents' stories that really inspired her to. So much of her work has been influenced by, you can say, maybe not this one event, but like the events that have happened in the past 75 to 80 years in the subcontinent, I suppose. I know mine have as well. And, she says it's an ode to her grandparents' generation. And, myself as well, I grew up listening to my grandmother's stories. But I know that there's a certain degree of, intergenerational trauma involved as well. There are stories of happiness, loss and happiness and all those kind of things. But I know that there is a certain load one has to carry as well, from that. And I feel that this is a sort of, exorcism of sorts, maybe, of trying to sort of, find a sort of way of explaining or understanding past events, I think. So, and CAP was formed on that basis, basically, so that Pakistanis would be more aware of their actual history, and through the methodology used and the oral histories, so that regardless of what is taught in schools, which may or may not be correct, it's always those kind of things which people's stories at the forefront. And most recently in Miss Marvel as well, um, you know Kamala, the hero of Miss Marvel, her backstory also involves a very interesting history. So I think that really spoke, and Sharmeen was very keen on showing the partition through the eyes of that as well. And I think we can see a short clip as well from that. Perhaps.
Yeah, real quick, another analogy that I would like to draw is with the memorial here in Oklahoma City, which was a site of loss and grief and mourning, but also bears testament to the resilience of the people of Oklahoma. So it is now a site of commemoration as well. So.
How do you transport an audience to 1947? That is the question that Christopher Glass, the production designer, Jules, my DOP, and Arjun, our costume designer, had. So we sat down and pored over hundreds of photographs that were taken at that time. I pulled Margaret Burke's photographs of processions of people leaving their homes, of violence in towns and villages, of heartbreak and horror on train tracks. And then we began to recreate those photographs, because only in recreating those photographs were we able to capture exactly what people were feeling in 1947.
All right, this provides a great segue into the questions that I have for both you, Noor and Samir. So question one is for both of you. Now, the partition of 1947 was a juxtaposition of displacement, mass migration, loss, and the birth of two new nation states, recreating identities, overcoming adversity and loss. So many aspects of the partition are repressed into the political unconscious of the people of South Asia. Home 1947 offers a humanizing framework for a difficult historical chapter. In what ways does this project affirm the identities of common people and their stories? Were some of these people whose stories you have told in this exhibition the unsung heroes of that era?
I'd begin by answering that by saying that what Home 1947 does, and the methodology that it sort of uses, that Sharmeen has used to inform the entire show, are people stories. So it's not a chronological event or retelling of 1947. It's in fact in people's own words. So as you go through the entire exhibition, you hear their own voices, you see their images, you see the suitcases that they packed their choicest belongings in, belongings that might not have been the most valuable, but were most significant, had most personal significance to them. So I think what it does is it humanizes it, and it talks about, it presents migration and displacement in a manner that, regardless of whether someone is South Asian or not, they can relate to.
No, I think anyone who comes to the exhibition will relate to so many things. I mean, the sudden, sudden loss of friendships, of possessions, of houses, of things that people took for granted, and having to be uprooted. And it's a story of so many people here in the U.S. as well. Of course, it's deeply relevant to all of South Asia as well, and many other parts of the world wherever there are conflicts happening. But I think that's what it's a universal kind of feeling of what home is, what it used to be, what it will be. All those kind of emotions, I think.
Right, it's a story that transcends cultural divides and racial divides, absolutely. So my next question is for you, Noor. Now, prevailing official narratives or accounts of the partition on both sides, India and Pakistan, tend to reinforce religious and social fracture lines. You see stories of people in West Pakistan and East Pakistan giving shelter to Hindus, and people in India giving shelter to Muslims, sometimes at great cost to themselves and their own lives, are rarely told. Those stories are marginalized. So, how does Home 1947 build bridges?
I think one of my favorite parts of the show actually are listening to the oral histories in particular. And throughout the entire show, you can see stories of people from one faith helping on the basis of humanity people of another faith. There are accounts of how people left in a rush and under immense confusion on 14th August 1947. They handed their house keys to their neighbor and said, we'll be back in a few days, but just look in, just keep track of things, and we will see you soon. And they have now retold the story to us, 75 years on. So I think how the show sort of builds bridges is that it presents, it puts you in the shoes of people who made the migration. And when you put yourself in their shoes, you're not thinking along the lines of sort of borders and ideologies. You're thinking in terms of, home and people. And I think it begs the question, is home a physical place? Is it memory? Is it people? Is it object? It raises a lot of questions.
Now, my third question is for both Samir and Noor. You see, I think about erasures in history textbooks in Oklahoma. And we're all aware that until very recently, the Tulsa Race Riot of 1921 was erased from memory. And high school children in Oklahoma had no idea that that race riot had even occurred. It was probably one of the worst incidents of racial violence in the history of the United States. So, similarly, how has education in South Asia addressed partition? Have you seen, or do you still see, similar erasures in social science and history textbooks in India and Pakistan? What are sources of information that South Asia's youth look to when framing ideas of the partition?
Well, I mean, I think that this exhibition is so important to kind of counteract some of of official histories of all three countries. It's not just India and Pakistan, or it's Bangladesh as well. There's so much still to unpack. There's so much to deconstruct from all these histories. But I think most people live with their own personal family histories. There are so many people, 15 million displaced. That's a huge number. We'll never know the real number, whatever either side chooses to write about how many people were displaced. We don't know. There are so many facts that are, we don't know the exact numbers that have, so I think all we can do moving forward is to kind of to respect and memorialize people's own personal accounts, I think. And this exhibition is a start in that direction. It's not claiming to be any kind of, the be all and end all of, whatever happened that period. I think it's just a very poignant sort of, memorial to some people. And it's, I don't think it claims to be everyone's experience of traveling from either side of the subcontinent during that turbulent time, basically. So
I think you're absolutely right. The exhibition definitely holds space to have a conversation and for all sorts of people to have that conversation. Also, sort of talking about education, in addition to the exhibit, another initiative that Sharmeen sort of took regarding education through Citizens Archive was that the archive was actually used as a basis to bring parallel narratives to the forefront. And from the material collected in the oral histories and GAPS archive, we've actually worked with local schools across Pakistan, particularly in the Sindh province, to develop a curriculum from them. So I think it's little initiatives such as these that put more and parallel information into the fore.
Yes, the project absolutely offers a viable alternative to the us-them discourse, which is one of the legacies of the partition. So could you tell us a little about, so Home 1947 illustrates how art, music, film, and literature can make viewers consider the humanist response to war. How have audiences received this exhibition in its previous iterations in Manchester, Mumbai, which I still call Bombay, Lahore, and Karachi?
I think it was very interesting for me. I wasn't involved in the project in Manchester, but I did visit it in Manchester when the project was on. And I just spent an afternoon there. And I remember there were people from all different backgrounds. There was a Sikh gentleman. He must have been in his 80s, deeply moved. And he just kept asking the poor girl who was behind, assisting, that he was like, how can I get in touch with these people? I want to speak to them. And he was just so moved. He was just like, and I felt for him because he just felt that he needed to get in touch with them. And so she was apologized, of course. I wasn't working with Sharmeen at that point. So it was just very interesting to see diaspora audiences versus the domestic, domestic in terms of like Pakistani audiences. I was there, one of the ushers during the Karachi and also the Lahore iterations. And that was also very interesting to see people's reactions, especially young people as well. Some people were curious, some people were moved, but like particularly the older generation, it touched a nerve. And again, it may not have been, but it was their parents. It was, and I think we are losing that whole generation. The partition generation is about to pass. It's, I think that's made all the more poignant. So, people came up to us in Karachi and Lahore and said, I heard stories like this, or this is just a huge, feeling, and it's just it's overwhelming, I think, and overwhelmingly intergenerational, as well.
Yes, so. It certainly is.
It definitely makes you want to share. So people see the exhibit and then they actually want to connect you to their relative, or they have a story that they would like to share. And I think in its own way, maybe it makes people feel safer or a little bit braver to have a conversation that they haven't before.
I think it's beautiful that Indians, Pakistanis, and Bangladeshis have gotten a chance to come together here in Oklahoma City because of this exhibition, a chance that we probably would never have gotten in our countries of origin. And I've always believed that the identity of a nation cannot be built on unquenchable hate, and certainly not on cashing in on the grief and agony of other people. I believe that the perpetuation of cultural myopia in societies as diverse as those of South Asia would be the bane of our existence. So I'm grateful for this opportunity to build bridges that your exhibition has given us here today in the United States of America. All right. Are we going to open the floor to questions?
Are. If anybody has any questions, we've put little slips of paper on your seats. If you've used them, wonderful. If you haven't, that's okay. We ask first for anybody who's seen the exhibition. Show of hands, how many people have been able to walk through a little bit? Okay, a decent amount of folks. That's great. So if you have any questions about what you saw or how you felt, what you experienced in the exhibition, we'd love for you to share, or anything about what was discussed on this panel.
Say something real quick.
Yes.
So we are very fortunate and privileged to have with us in the audience Dr. Nanda, who actually witnessed the partition. We're also very privileged to have my mother in the audience, who was born in pre-partition Lahore. And on her passport, her place of birth still says Lahore, undivided India. So.
Thank you for sharing that. Anyone have any questions to start us off? And then if you haven't, we'll start with the people who have experienced it, and then we'll move on.
I'm in the footsteps of Dr. Nanda. I was born in Hyderabad, Sindh. So my passport still says Hyderabad, Sindh, but I always say India. And this time I had trouble going to India for visiting my family because they say you're Pakistan. Because Pakistan didn't exist. So I think, unfortunately, it's the creation of the politicians, because we lived next to our friends who were Muslim, and they helped us to leave to arrive in Ajmer during the partition. I was only 6, so Dr. Nanda has probably better memories than I have, but the memories are fresh. So the question to you is, whoever saw your movie clip, how much PTSD came about in people who were exposed to the situation? They're reliving, you're on the train was stopped, some women were taken off the train, they looted. Both sides, I'm not saying one or another. So till you reach the border across the artificial creation of mankind, you suddenly were displaced, you had no idea where you're going. And then you were in a refugee camp for 2 months, you had everything, and you had nothing. But if somebody sees your movie, like the people in Vietnam War, people coming from Afghanistan, do they go through horrendous PTSD? They can't sleep for several days after they've seen. I haven't seen the clip. I came a bit late. Again, my name is Udo Thadani.
Right.
I'm a Sindhi, but memories are still fresh, even I was 6.
The heart of this exhibition are the films, so I would urge you to watch the films. They bring out different aspects of people's experiences, some happy, some sad. Sharmeen is a filmmaker, so they are the heart of the exhibition, and I would urge you to watch the films. We don't talk about specifics in the films. No mention is made of any individual country. No mention of India or Pakistan or Bangladesh, or obviously, sorry, Bangladesh wasn't there at the time. But so it talks about a journey and loss or happiness or all these different kind of emotions, leaving a place, friendships that were, left behind. Some were maintained, some were not. So I urge you to watch the films. It's really about the human experience rather than the specifics.
It is, well, firstly, thank you for sharing that, and for being here with us. I think there have been very few places where, I know South Asians, but a lot of us can come together and actually have enough distance from the event of trauma to be able to talk about it, let alone come to terms with it. And I think this is perhaps an opportunity for that to happen.
Hi, I'm Zoe Sharinian, professor of South Asian music at the University of Oklahoma. And I'm wondering, how have you, particularly from an archival perspective, been able to include the history and the archival history of the lower castes and lower classes of people of migrants who experience this?
Question. So ultimately, how an oral history project was run and how the oral history project at CAP was run is that it started, and from the first 5 people who we interviewed, that's where our roster of connections was built from. So they recommended 5 people, and they recommended 5 people. In the exhibition, it's not just material from the Citizens Archive of Pakistan, it's also actually material from the Citizens Archive of India that's featured in the exhibition. So we try to capture as diverse a perspective as we could and include that in the exhibition. But that's always, I mean, there's a big responsibility of archives to sort of think about exactly what you're talking about, right? Your audience is diverse, and thus your archive must be reflective of it also. Some of the photographs that you see in the exhibition are actually by a photojournalist called F.E. Chaudhry, who is known now as the father of photojournalism in Pakistan. But the reason why a lot of his images are so recognizable is because his images were the only ones that would make it to the local newspapers, because all the other photographers were British photographers whose archives were, donated to Getty, for example. There was a bit of a lock and a key before you could access those, whereas F.E. Chaudhry's were, accessible. So I think an archive really needs to take into account all sides, not just subjects, but also contributors whose material ends up in the archive.
I don't have a question. I lived through it, and I was about 19 plus years old at that time. I spent about 3 months as a homeless, moving from one city to another, trying to find something. My whole family was with me. We were very fortunate. We didn't lose anyone out of our family. A lot of people lost near and dear ones. It was a tragedy that happened that I hope generations will never repeat. But unfortunately, I have lived through the last about 70 years and seen more of the same here, there, and everywhere. I don't think human beings learn anything from these experiences. The problem is that as individuals, we are compassionate and nice, but I don't know how the groups become either based on religion or appearance or color or whatever. It drives them mad. I have seen people walking as a convoy of people walking along the road in groups. A child died, they buried right there by the road and moved on. I mean, it is you have no idea. I cannot explain you the depth of my feelings and what I witnessed. And I can only tell you that it was the most tragic thing in my life. One thing I did after retirement from the University of Oklahoma, I sat down and wrote my little biography so my children and grandchildren would read it. I can tell you, at this time, I've given them each, one of my students from Japan took my manuscript and put it in the form of a book. I've given one book to all of my grandchildren, and I can tell you, I doubt if they have all read the whole thing. But we did record this so that the progeny would know where we were, where we come from, and how well we have rehabilitated ourselves. The only thing good about it is that all the people who were uprooted moved to their respective countries. They rehabilitated themselves. They are now no longer refugees. We're not refugees. We all, and today, I remember when we used to buy about maybe 200 cc of milk to make tea for 9 people. We have lived through that. We've seen that. But today, we're very prosperous. We are very happy. God has been great to us. But so has it been for a lot of other people all over. So people have settled down. We don't have any animosity. I come from a city that is called Lyalpur, that was called Lyalpur. They changed the name and call it Faisalabad. I've been to see my home. One time I went and saw the home with my wife. People thought that I had come to take some jewelry or something that we had buried there. I said, nothing. I just want to see where I used to be. They let me in. Things were changed. This time I went 7 years ago. I had been asked to come and give a course there. And I went to Lyalpur, and there was no house. It was all a bazaar now. So things changed. 70 years have passed, and we have moved on. And we just love each other. I enjoy going to Pakistan. I have friends there, and I love people, and I enjoy their company. They are all very nice. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Nanda. That's oral history right there. Thank you. We're so privileged to have you with us.
That was wonderful. Any last questions, remaining questions? Okay, or comments? Okay, I think we have time for 2 more. Is everybody okay with that? And then there's time to see the exhibition if you haven't already.
So I would like to share that I was born in Pakistan, but the child of people who actually came on the train to Karachi. So I grew up with personal stories from them, lots of them, but I actually learned a lot from literature. Bhapsi Sidhwa was here at OU, and I got to meet her cracking India, so she lived through that. And then many, many stories of the diaspora, as well as Manto. My father was part of the group from Aligarh, so I sort of knew a lot of the literature of undivided India and subsequently Pakistan. Just thought I would share that the stories have passed on through my generation to all of you.
Thank you, Farhad. Bushra.
So it appears that it's my destiny to follow Dr. Farhat in everything, whether it's going to the same school and the same medical school after that, or asking a question after her. Just a quick story I wanted to share. My great uncle, my grandfather was not in favor of the partition. Originally, eventually moved to Pakistan. But on the eve of 1947, my great uncle left his brother left his family very much in favor of the partition, boarded a train, and decided to move to Pakistan. I'm sorry, it's emotional. The train that he was on, they were a privileged family. He was dressed like a Western person. He was in a suit, and he had a hat, and he was rather light-skinned. So everybody other than him was killed on that train. And they spared him because he could speak English, and it was thought that he was a Britisher. So that all being said, I thought that what you represented in one of the movies, which was that the radio is speaking of freedom and independence, there's a fire burning on that radio. So it's so important to discuss the trauma, yet be cognizant of the fact that, like Dr. Nanda mentioned, we did end up rehabilitating ourselves in countries of our choice, whether those choices were made by force or by intention. So I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you, Bushra. Thank you very much.
Thank you. What's that? One last question? One last question.
Thank you so much. First of all, this is amazing. I think that many times that we look at the history, the past, we hear the stories. The question I'd like to ask you, you mentioned that one of the reasons that she created the exhibition and that you've gotten involved is because you understand what storytelling is about. But at the end of the day, when we think about storytelling, I always ask the question, what message are we supposed to leave here with? What can we do as Oklahomans from seeing this exhibition? It's amazing, it's a film, it's artistic, it's cultural, but as an advocate myself, I always ask the question, what am I supposed to do with this information to make my environment better? Could you answer that question, please?
I'm going to answer it with a question, which is most unhelpful of me, which is that, one, I hope that you were able to see the show. And I hope that seeing the show makes you want to bring more people to it and having similar conversations like the ones that we just did.
I would like to say in response to your question that those who forget history are condemned to repeat it. So bringing oral histories out of the woodwork, highlighting them, reminds us of tragedies that people suffered. And again, as I said at the very beginning, of their ability to overcome their sufferings and recreate their identities. So, absolutely, build bridges, not walls. And also, memorializing an event like the Partition can either evoke hate, increase divides, or can evoke empathy. And I hope we all leave feeling more empathetic and compassionate toward the other.
Yeah. Great. But I'd just like to say, you're also free to draw your own conclusions. I don't think the exhibition is beyond the scope of the exhibition to offer solutions to anything. And as I was just going to say, empathy as well. I think it's about the human condition. It's about not judging people on their nationality or their origin or religion or any of those things. So that's why I think it is a universal kind of expression of, what it is to be human, I think, really. So you're free to draw your own conclusions, I hope.
And I'm also going to introduce Karina Evangelista, who's our Senior Director of Curatorial Affairs, who made this entire thing happen, who made this exhibition happen along with a team from exhibitions and curatorial and education. But I would like to invite her to close us out.
So Home 1947 has been an incredible undertaking, and I cannot thank our panelists tonight enough for the tireless commitment, the intellectual rigor, and their warmth and friendship forged over the last number of intense months of putting this exhibition together. Samir, Noor, and Nyla, I extend my thanks in my native tongue in Filipino. Maraming salamat po. And in the more universal, uh, many thanks to the members of our advisory committee who have joined us regularly over the months to provide incredible insight. Special mention goes to Nyla, who has played multiple roles as tonight's moderator, contributing author to the exhibition catalog that will be published soon, and committee chair. Amit Baisha, Pooja Singhal, and Savita Tyagi for the Hindi translations, and Wasim Ahmed, whose robust spirit during this entire process has literally and figuratively nourished us. Thanks to my colleagues at Oklahoma Contemporary, Michael Myers, Trent Riley, Jamie Thompson, Marie Casimir, and Hannah Jean Heffron for having been key institutional representatives in this committee. I wish to acknowledge the many departments within Oklahoma Contemporary who have contributed to this exhibition: communications and marketing, development, education, visitor experience, and operations. This exhibition came together with a wonderful crew of art handlers under John Antonelli's supervision that professed, we can do it, and boy, did we do it. And the calm expertise of our technical consultant, Matt Miller, and the incredible support of Marie Butterline, Raven Foltz, Christy Duane, Whitney Stevens, Kat Kirkpatrick, and Helen Schaefer. To Beth Cremines and Kaylin Roach, you have been both steady anchors and superb propellers in this journey, whose intensity was expertly outwitted by your unflagging dedication, humor, and solid faith in the import and meaning of this project. For believing with me that the depth and reach of Home 1947 reverberates way beyond us. You are my Miss Marvels. The word trauma originally referred to physical wounds, but has since evolved to include injuries on the mind and the self that may seem invisible, but are imprints logged in our memory storage. And so we all have Sharmeen Obaid Chinoy to thank for creating an immensely immersive experience that somehow masterfully extracts beauty from pain. And she does this because of her unwavering conviction that the beating heart of what it means to be a citizen of the world is shared humanity despite historic division. The word trauma originally referred to physical wounds. We have quite a few doctors in the room, but has since evolved to include injuries on the mind and the self that may seem invisible, but are imprints logged in our memory storage. If loss and longing are very strong themes in the exhibition, they filter trauma through nostalgia. The word nostalgia was coined from the Greek words nostos, meaning homecoming, and algos, referring to pangs of acute pain in the 17th century to describe a pathological anxiety experienced by soldiers longing to return to the safety of their homes. Sharmeen asks through this exhibition, how do we reimagine the home we left behind that historical forces might have somehow taught us to now view as the foreign territory of our enemy? With a wonderful sense of Rat Kirani, night jasmine, and Mitiatar, the smell of parched earth after rain, she urges us to embrace what binds us. To close, I quote Arundhati Roy, who wrote in The Ministry of Utmost Happiness an allegory about the legacies of partition. One character waited to die. Another character waited to kill. These two short sentences precede the concluding line, which reads, quote, "And miles away, in a troubled forest, a baby waited to be born." Home 1947 recreates the past and asks, after nearly 8 decades of lingering intergenerational trauma, how do we collectively shape and nurture the future? How do we nurture the child waiting to be born? Thank you.